Sign up, a boost. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Hayden City Council to order. Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Council President Satterfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Panabaker?
Yes.
And Councilmember DeLange?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Alan White, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections by any member of the council to the agenda?
I have none.
Hearing none, we can then move forward. Consent calendar. A, approval of November 24th, 2020 City Council minutes. B, approval of December 8th, 2020 City Council minutes. C, approval of December 14th, 2021 City Council minutes. D, approval of Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board wastewater treatment plant facility upgrades payment requests. E, approval of Kootenai County Elections Office use of Hayden City Hall as a polling place. F, approval of JB Commercial Sites final plat. G, Hayden Canyon Storage First Amendment to the Master Site Development Agreement. H, approval of William Robinette Profit Sharing Plan Deferred Improvement Agreement. I, acceptance of William Robinette Profit Sharing Plan Dairy Queen Grant of Easement and Dedication of Right-of-Way. J, approval of North Kootenai Water and Sewer District Memorandum of Understanding for 4th Street and Honeysuckle Avenue Roundabout. K, approval of Mabry Annexation Agreement, PZE-21-0165. L, approval of Mabry Annexation and Zone Designation Written Decision, PZ-21-0165. M, approval of Palmer Zone Map Amendment Written Decision, PZ-21-0218. N, approval of Aspen Home Zone Map Amendment Written Decision, PZ-21-0213. O, approval of the Dance Company Contractual Services Agreement. P, approval of Susan Bockelman, DBA, the Plant Pro Contractual Services Agreement. Q, approval of Lake City Figure Skating Contractual Services Agreement. R, approval of Technique Gymnastics Contractual Services Agreement. S, approval of K Tigers Taekwondo Contractual Services Agreement. T, approval of Alta Dance Academy Contractual Services Agreement. U, approval of contractual services agreement with Flanagan Ventures, DBA Wiley E. Waters. V, approval of contractual services agreement with Christopher D. Gugamas, DBA Handshake Productions for Summer Concert Series. W, approval of 3rd Annual Icebreaker Disc Golf Event Permit Application. X, ratification of December payroll. Y, ratification of bills for payment from December 20, 2021. Z, ratification of bills for payment from December 28, 2021. AA, bills for payment. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar as read?
So moved.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Who did you get for the motion?
I actually gave the motion to Jerry DeLange and second to Councilmember Panabaker, if that's okay.
If you're okay with that, perfect. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Mayor, I have
Yes.
I have a few questions.
Please.
Just on item 1H, it's the William Robinette Profit Sharing Plan Deferment Improvement Agreement. Just for clarification, it almost sounds like we're somehow sharing profit with, or Robinette's sharing profit with us, and I just want to make sure that that's not the case. It's just the name of the
Entity.
legal entity.
Matt, this is Caitlin. That's correct. That's
Yeah.
who's the property owner and the title of the property.
That's how
is,
it
too.
looks. So that's the legal description.
Yep.
Right, I just want to make for clarification
Okay.
purposes that is the case. On the bills, one question on our bills, it's on page 3 of 28, and it's the vendor for Bernardo Wills Architecture, the Hayden Park and Water Tower. My question is, that was for $1,462.50. My understanding is that project still a go? Are we involved with it or not? Is the city still involved with that project?
Not to the extent, well, go ahead, Brett.
I was just going to say it's changed. So the idea of using the water tower and putting people on there is not. The water district voted not to do that, but the idea of the park can still move forward. So we have work to do on that still.
Which is why there was no workshop, Councilmember Roeder, today.
Okay,
So that
great.
changed.
And then one last question. Man, I've got a bad memory, but we have approval of council meeting minutes about a year ago, and I'm just wondering, what happened?
You mean December 24th, 2020?
And December 8th.
Yeah,
Or November 24th and December? Abby, would you like to address
yeah,
that?
I am.
Yes, council members, that is correct. Those are from 2020 that were not completed. There was a list of things that went into why those did not get completed at that time. Most of it had to do with workload and just not being able to get them completed in a timely fashion. So I do apologize that you are seeing those. That's not something that is going to occur regularly. But yes, that is correct, that they are from 2020.
So there were no changes, but the first two were 2020 and then 2021. So that was not a typo.
Correct.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Council President Satterfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Roeder? Oh, I think we lost Councilmember Roeder's audio.
We did, he's red.
We're gonna go, I'll continue on, maybe he can jump back on. Councilmember Panabaker?
Yes.
Councilmember DeLange?
Yes.
I'll wait for Councilmember Roeder.
Does he do that?
Yes,
But he's on his cell phone,
yes.
which is different. Matt, we can see you, so can you thumb up if you hear me?
Oh, there he is.
There he is coming, okay. Can you hear us now, Matt?
Yeah, I lost you. I had to redial, sorry.
Okay, not a problem.
And your vote for the approval of the consent calendar?
My vote is yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
To visitor public comment on non-agenda items. Hearing none, unfinished business. 3A, action item, Mabry annexation and zone designation ordinance. Who's doing, Donna, are you doing that?
Yeah, it's just a continuation of the written decision was approved under consent. The annexation agreement was approved under consent.
Good.
And so the ordinance is just the final piece of that.
Okay. I know. We're going to do it right. Do I have a motion to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading?
So moved.
We have a second.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember DeLange?
Yes.
Councilmember Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Panabaker?
Yes.
And Council President Satterfield?
An ordinance of the City of Hayden, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for annexation of approximately 4.74 acres of land located approximately 1,300 feet south of Giovanni Lane and west of North Atlas Road, more commonly known as 8635 North Atlas Road, providing zoning of the property so annexed, a single-family residential, providing for the amendment to the official zoning map, providing severability, and providing an effective date hereof. Do we have a motion that the ordinance be adopted on its having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember Roder,
No.
Councilmember Panabaker,
Yes.
Council President Satterfield,
Yes.
and Councilmember DeLang.
Yes.
3B, action item, Crawford Park Land Water Conservation Fund Grant Adjusted Boundary Request.
Susie?
So we applied for the LWCF grant do I have to go up there?
No, can she stay there?
Yeah.
Okay, we can't, so you've got to turn on your,
Is our mic not on?
As long as it's not red, it's turned on.
It's on. Am I just
Okay.
not talking loud enough?
thank you.
We applied for the grant in mid-2021, and it's currently under review by the state and the National Park Service. So the state recommended it to National Park Service, and the National Park Service wants us to so our original grant included 6 acres, and they want us to include the full 10 that we have out south of Crawford Park. So they are urgently requesting us, to include that. So since you approved this grant with 6 acres, we're now asking that you would approve for the full 10 acres to be included in the grant.
And what are so if we do not do this, what are the ramifications?
It could mean we don't get the grant, which is
Okay.
like a $500,000 grant.
Does this cost the city any more money?
No.
Thank you. Is there anything other than the grant application simply needed to include the entity in a whole? Is that correct?
Yes, we just need to include the full 10 acres.
Okay. Any questions for Susie? No. Hearing none. Do we have a motion? Do we need a motion then to, how do you want that read? To extend the Crawford Park Land Water Conservation Fund Grant Adjusted Boundary Request to 10 acres?
Perfect.
Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
So we have a motion.
Second?
And we have a second to extend Crawford Park Land Water Conservation Fund Grant Adjusted Boundary Request to 10 acres. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember DeLang,
Yes.
Councilmember Panabaker,
Yes.
Councilmember Roder,
Yes.
and Council President Satterfield.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we're grateful for the actions on the unfinished business side. I want to thank both council members for their work, for their professionalism, for the time and effort that it has taken to be able to represent the citizenry for the citizens of Hayden. It's been an honor to serve with you. Councilmember Panabaker, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember DeLang, thank you very much. Is there anything either of you would like to say?
I don't want to get started. Okay? My mother raised me, if I haven't got anything nice to say to keep my mouth shut, for once I will.
You'd cry.
I just want to thank everyone. Again, it's been an honor to serve the citizens of Hayden for the past 20 years, and I want to welcome the 2 new council members, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll now have the oath of office for the 2 council members, and Abby's done a great job in trying to make it easy. So, and it's okay to clap or cheer. So Abby, the floor is yours.
All right, we can have Sandra and Ed come on up here. Wherever you would like.
Okay.
Both on this side, I guess.
Okay.
And if you could go ahead and raise your right hand, please. And if you would like to, you can absolutely both do it. Perfect. All
I want to
right.
get everybody in position. Is there anyone else that would like to get in position?
Do you, Ed DePriest and Sandra White, solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Idaho, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of council member of the City of Hayden according to the best of your ability?
I do.
I do. Okay. That is everything. That's it.
We're now going to take a break so that everything can be then done appropriately with respect to the two new council members. So welcome and come take your place on here where we are. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, a little less, it depends. Abby's going to tell us.
5-minute break is good.
Okay, perfect.
Leave these here.
we have had the opportunity to provide oath of office. We now need an election of council president. That will come from members of the council. Do we have a motion to elect a council president?
I would like to nominate Matt Roeder for president.
We don't need a motion, correct? We don't need a second because it's an election?
Right, we would need a
But they need a,
motion in a second.
That's
yeah,
what I
and
mean.
then a
And it
vote.
needs to be through you.
Yep, it's with council to do that.
So we've had a motion.
I'll second.
We had a motion and a second. I got to stay away. Can I say like any discussion, roll call vote, or do they need to? Roger, you're the council president. You probably should be driving this. You're the acting council president. So we've had a motion and a second. It is in your court to ask them for a vote.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Roeder,
Yes.
Council President Satterfield,
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest,
Yes.
and Councilmember White.
Yes.
It was unanimous. And Matt, that's the most heartfelt yes I've heard from you in a long time. 4C, confirmation of city representatives for boards. I think it's important. I've met with each member of council in order to be able to understand their preferences so that we can be as efficient as possible with respect to our representation. These individual council members will be official representatives of the city of Hayden unless, as I go through the discussion, unless they are not allowed to do so. So Councilmember White will serve as a representative of the city of Hayden for Panhandle Area Council. Councilmember DePriest will be a representative for the KMPO, Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization. Also, he will serve, and please help me to make sure this is correct, as an official representative on the working group for the Housing Alliance.
I think that's fine.
Is that fine?
Yeah, we know what that is.
Good.
Yeah. Is,
Go ahead.
sorry, Mayor, for clarification, is that the regional? What's
Yes,
the
that
proper
was started by Kiki.
We need to make sure that that's properly identified for the minutes.
regional housing and growth
I believe it's
issues
Kootenai
partnership
County
or something like that?
Regional,
Yeah, we'll get it on the minutes. We can put the correct. We know what it is. It started by Kiki Miller.
The also, and then Councilmember Roeder, Council President Roeder will then serve as the non-voting entity with respect to HARSB. And so he will be in an official capacity but will not be voting. The last meeting, Council Member Satterfield will be the voting member for HARSB. So I don't know that each council member is welcome to be able to attend any meetings that they would like, but in doing so, they will not be there unless already identified in an official capacity. So do we have a motion to approve the assignments, confirmation of city representatives for boards?
So moved.
So moved.
I'd like that, please. Thank you. We have a motion. Roger, a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember DePriest,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Satterfield,
Yes.
and Council President Roeder.
Yes.
Okay, that was pretty close as the last one, so you're doing pretty well there. For those that, and for the record, Council President Roeder has been, he will stay remote due to the need to be able to be free of viruses and issues with respect to the manner in which he's taking care of his sweetheart. So we wish her the best. We know that it's difficult right now, and you'll be able to do whatever you need to do remotely to make sure that you're covered and protected. So thank you for that. 4D, action item, appeal of building permit PB-21-0495 for residential accessory dwelling unit at 1573 West Orchard Avenue. Donna, your stealth.
Not quite, because I didn't get this done first. So.
And be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, is that someone other than Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So in your packets, there's a memo that kind of recaps where we're at. And Sharon Smith, the person that is appealing the action of issuing a building permit for an accessory dwelling unit for this parcel, is attending by phone. The owner of the property is in the audience, and I know that we have invited the owner of the adjacent property to the east, although I'm not seeing them here. Pointing. Okay, I'm not seeing them here for 15.
Sharon was on.
I know, but that was the property to the north. So that's where I'm going. So this is the property, 1573. Has a house. It has a building permit for a shop to go on in the corner, and it has a request for an accessory dwelling unit to go to the north of the existing house. It's a larger lot than minimum lot size, and residential single-family zones allow for accessory dwelling units to be placed by the zone, allowed outright, as long as the lot size meets lot coverages, and it meets all of the other design standards for an accessory dwelling unit. This particular property, on the property to the east, when they became residential single-family, entered into a zoning development agreement that is attached in your memo that limited the number of dwelling units between those two lots in no particular fashion to 3 dwelling units. So as it stands today, there is a single-family residence. That's all that exists out there is one house. 1569, at the time of the zoning development agreement, had 2 mobile homes that were on the project site, and those had since been removed. Mrs. Smith, or Dr. Smith, included in her notes references to a written decision as part of Rutledge Addition subdivision, which never went past the point of memorandum of understanding. There's no signature to that. It never was constructed. It was never platted. It never happened. So there weren't additional lots that were created. So again, we have 2 lots, and we currently have 1 single-family residence on 1 lot. And then there are notes in the memo that talk, just because we have a really full house here, and I just want to kind of bring them up to speed so they're kind of hearing what you've seen in your memo. There was, 2 years ago, there were a project site that requested to move 2 homes into 1569, but due to a variety of issues with that move and required improvements to the property site, that move has not happened, and here we are nearly 3 years later. And those permits by Idaho, or by international building codes, which we have adopted in our building code requirements, those have long since expired as well. So again, we have 2 lots with 1 dwelling. So that kind of brings you up to speed. I do have this slide that just kind of pulls in closer to that aerial, and I would defer to the council. We did tell Dr. Smith that she would have the opportunity to speak to you. It's her appeal. And we did tell the owner of the property that he would also be able to answer questions. So beyond that, that's about what I have.
Thank you.
I did want to note that at the end of your discussion, because this is an appeal decision, that the city council may either grant the appeal, which therefore would deny the building permit for the accessory dwelling unit, or you could deny the appeal, which therefore would allow the building permit to be issued, and it is ready to issue. It has been stayed based on this request.
And for those English majors in the audience, that is correct. A deny for the appeal allows the building permit to move forward, and a grant of the appeal denies the building permit. We weren't clear, so I hope. Okay, so before we get to the applicants, do we have any questions for Donna?
I do.
Please.
Okay, as going through the packet, and I'm going to skip right to the back of the zoning development agreement. And I think that you answered what I'm about to ask, but it seems like there's been a complicated transfer of here or request, and it appears that there was, as I read this there, now therefore the zone change requested by applicants for the above described property, single family, is approved conditioned upon the following. And it talks about having 3 separate lots, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the original agreement, that it would be divided into 3? Or am I misunderstanding this?
It may have been the intent of the Rutledges, but I can't speak to intent because the plat never happened. So
it has never been officially divided into 3 lots?
It has not.
Okay. And legally that's required, right?
Correct, right.
Okay.
To have, they would have to go through the subdivision process to divide.
Regardless of what these say.
To divide it, but it not necessarily to put as 2 dwellings on a single
No,
lot.
he just meant to create you meant to create the 3 lots, right?
And we need to
Councilmember
stay
DePriest?
consistent on that.
I,
So the question.
Right, lots, right? To
lots.
create 3 separate lots.
Right.
Right, that requires a subdivision. 3 dwelling units on the whole was just allowed by the zoning development.
But at the time of this agreement, had they split it or gone through the process, were they legally allowed to split it into 3 lots? Is that what this is saying? They could have at the time platted it, I guess, for 3 lots.
They could plat it. It's large enough to plat
But
into
they did
3
not.
lots. But they did not finish
And that was in
subdivision.
2006.
Right.
And so at the time of the zoning development agreement, those 2 lots, what is today 1573 and 1569, and the addresses were probably even the same in the zoning development agreement, but those 2 lots were owned by the same property owner, still separate lots, but they were owned by the same property owner at the time. And under the zoning development agreement, which is in there, the density limitations, it says any use of the above described property shall be limited to 3 residential dwelling units for the entire 1 acre of property,
Right.
which is made up of the both parcels.
Now, I may be getting ahead here because I believe somewhere in the appeal, there was talk about property rights and the fact that if one of those lots is granted 2 dwellings, that it prohibits the other lot from having the ability to have their additional lot, who gets the 3rd lot in the whole acre type of discussion.
Right. The zoning development agreement, I think probably at the time, I wasn't here then, but at the time with both of the parcels being owned by the same property owner, the limiting to 3 residential units for the 2 made sense. But you're right, a direct reading of the zoning development agreement is that the 2 parcels, 1573 and 1569, get a combination of 3. So not 3 between them, just 3. So an obvious reading is somebody gets 2, somebody gets 1. But at the time, they were both owned by the same parcel. Today, as it exists, there is only 1 dwelling unit, and that's on 1573, which is the property that has come before you for,
So would it be up to in the future, let's say, these are 2 separate owners right now, right? Of
Yes.
each lot? If they have an issue between who gets the 2nd lot and who doesn't, say they both wanted the 2nd lot, that would be an issue for them to deal with outside of council, correct? That's another...
Yeah, there could also a possibility to modify or terminate the zoning development agreement, which could come back before you.
Okay, thank
But
you.
it runs with the land on both parcels.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions for Donna?
I have a question for Caitlin.
Sure, or Caitlin?
Caitlin, legal ramifications, if any?
I don't, so I read the zoning development agreement to exactly allow for this ADU. As it exists today, there's 1 single family, there's 1 residential unit between the 2 lots. I think a direct reading of the zoning development agreement clearly allows for him, the owner of 1573, to request an ADU. It's allowed outright in the zone and still allowed under the zoning development agreement. If there were 2 on the other property, if 1569 had 2 dwellings, I would say, well, no, it's clearly prohibited, but that's not the case here. There really is only 1 between the 2. So I think reading it otherwise isn't what the zoning development agreement says.
And does one address have a priority over the other?
So the owner of 1569, and that is in the memo, has mentioned that he was vested under, previous permit applications, but that's not the case. The permits have either never been issued or expired under the building code. So there is no active permit on 1569 to put a dwelling unit on there. So today, the 1573 is the only one with an active permit on that property.
Thank you.
Yep. And this is a process-wise an appeal of an administrative decision, the administrative being the issuance of the ADU. We don't see many of these processes, but that's what this process is limited to. And then for discussion on this hearing, it's not for public comment. It's just between the appellant and the affected property owner.
It's a public meeting.
Yep.
So, Donna, those individuals that you invited to speak, are they prepared?
I have a question.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Councilmember White.
Yes, I was just wondering, how does this affect the building on the east, the property on the east? If this is granted, will they only be able to put one building on that one?
Yep, by a reading of the zoning development agreement.
Okay, all right. And what's the status of the property on the east? Are they going to try to build on that we know of?
Sounds like a pretty, I don't know if extensive is the right word, but there's a history on that. 2019, I think they came in, applied for relocation permits for 2 homes. I don't think ever received that permit. There's been revised site plans. Nothing's been approved. No active building permit today, no.
Okay. I happen to live around the corner from there, and I've driven by it before I knew about this, and it has for sale signs on it. So how would this affect the sale of the house?
Great question.
So the AD, I mean, I can't speak to it like not completing a sale. I'll leave
not for sale.
the adjacent. So the zoning development agreement runs with the land, and so whoever acquires that property acquires it with the same restrictions here, which is the zoning development agreement's on it, and will have to take the property potentially with the risk that they could only have one residential unit on it.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Any other questions? Councilmember Roeder, do you have questions?
Yeah, I have one for Caitlin, please. Can you hear me okay?
I can,
Yes,
yep.
better.
Okay, thank you. My question is, if we deny the appeal, what kind of legal position does that put us in? Are we well within the law and that we can deny the appeal?
Yeah, yes, I believe so. So we have a process in our code that allows for an appeal of administrative decisions. We're carrying out that hearing today on the process with Ms. Smith to be able to hear her appeal in this matter. I think just given the verbiage on the zoning development agreement, it's just clear from the wording of it that it absolutely states that between the 2 parcels of 1 acre, it's limited to 3 residential units. So
And for clarification, because Council President Roeder, if we deny the appeal, it allows for the building permit.
right, yeah, and that's what he's saying. So about denying it, right?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Where on the property would the garage and the accessory dwelling be put?
as proposed, the house is here. There's a shop in this neck of the woods, and the accessory dwelling unit is in the rear of the property,
And how
which
many-
is part of the requirement and design standards of an accessory dwelling unit.
How many feet away from the property line?
10 feet, just like a principal structure, just like a house.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Caitlin or Donna?
I have another one, Mayor, if I may. This one's for Caitlin. Let's go conversely. If we allow the appeal, does that put us in a legal position with the owner of 1573 where we have liability?
Yeah, I think going that direction, Matt, I certainly can see a concern for the city in denying what I think is a valid building permit for an accessory dwelling unit, given that what the zoning development agreement allows.
And that was an answer to your question. That's or one of the questions. So we can repeat, because it's not easy back and forth. If we deny the appeal, it allows for the building permit. If we approve the appeal,
Grant the appeal.
it denies. And could you please, for the record, provide the legal ramifications associated with those decisions?
So I think from just a reading of the record in the zoning development agreement that the city has approved and that's in place on the property, that's what we have to go by for limiting what we're all here today for what's required on these two parcels. Given the language in the zoning development agreement, an ADU, and as the properties as they exist today, with only one residential dwelling unit, the ADU, it's clear that it allows for, or excuse me, the zoning development agreement, it's clear that it allows for this ADU. With this, there's only two of the three. So in terms of risk and potential liabilities for the city, I mean, you'd be denying somebody a valid building permit for an accessory dwelling unit allowed by that zone, allowed outright in their zone, but also in their zoning development agreement.
Yes.
The thought just popped into my head, and it's probably off the hook here, but the agreement is for 3 dwellings for the entire 1 acre.
Mm-hmm.
Presently, the east parcel is undeveloped. What if, and this is hypothetical, I guess, the west lot were to put 2 more dwellings, or is it not large enough to put 2 more dwellings on?
I don't think it is at all of the size, certainly not with what's currently on it today. I think it can only have, I'll let Donna speak to it, but right, only the primary structure and ADU is all that fits on that piece.
That's correct.
Okay.
And given the fact that they are dedicating right-of-way on Ramsey Road and on Orchard Avenue to meet the typical
Right.
sections for road right-of-way, it also limits the size.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So where I was going is, there's no possibility that through any manner that east lot, because 3 were on the west lot, that.
Correct, right.
Yeah, okay, good.
This lot's limited to 2.
Good.
Which is why we're here.
Well, one more question, if I may, for Caitlin. So Caitlin, we have to rely on you on legal opinions, which I value very much. So what is your recommendation to the council as to which way we should go on here to keep us out of hot water?
In the administrative appeal here, I would recommend that you deny the appeal and grant the building permit for the ADU, just given the verbiage on the zoning development agreement that the city has approved previously.
Thank you.
I wanted to get there, but I wanted the opportunity for those that are prepared to be able to speak. So, Donna, go ahead, or how?
So Dr. Sharon Smith, who's on the phone, kind of right here on the right-hand side, you can sign up to see her. She lives at this address, just north of the property site. So, Dr. Smith, if you'd like to present.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, young lady. How are you?
I'm fine. I just got out of the hospital a few weeks ago, a ruptured appendix at age 81, so I'm home recovering now and feeling better.
That appendix hang on for a long time, though.
It did. My sister had hers out at 11, so I think I outdid her a bit.
There you go.
Okay. My son and I have owned this home at 9230 North Ramsey for over 45 years. My mother and father's ashes are under a rose bush in our front yard. So I have a lot of positive feelings about where we live and what's going on. And I watch very closely. I'm sure there's other members there, the city staff can tell you, this has been a sore point, these properties to the south of us. We've had a sawmill there and a drying shed that caught the house on fire one night. That's 15, I think that's called 73 now, 9022 North Ramsey. We've had a drug dealer that lived there he allowed the house to nearly collapse on itself. We've had fish and game there with guns and that kind of thing to arrest the occupants of one of the trailers, and they came in through our yard and went out back, and we had to lay down on the floor until they finished. So I'm glad to see something positive being done with that. But I think that this ADU that has been applied for is wrong because it violates the letter, spirit, and intent of that conditional zoning agreement. I was present that night that the council heard the Rutledge rezoning request, and the minutes reflect my memory of the discussion, but lack some of the detail that I had. At that time, Lisa Key explained what was going to happen. She said that there would be one home on the west end of this property and two home sites. At that point, there were two mobile homes on that, and that they would be split into quarter-acre parcels. Well, at that time of this hearing before the City Council on November 28, 2006, the property had already been split in two. It was two separate parcels and had been filed with the county recorder. Those were the problem with this was always that these lots were of unequal size. One is larger than the other. The east half is larger. It's almost half an acre. And the west half, where Mr. Beveridge lives, is just about a third of an acre, not quite. So by splitting the east half, it makes the minimum size to build on. 2.204 and 0.235 is what it works out to, and they're very close to the same. Councilmember Beck, during this hearing, asked for clarification about the request to develop. The wording used was 3 home sites on a 1-acre parcel. It was never 1 acre. It's 3/4 of an acre, or 0.777. Lisa Key said that it is 2 separate lots, that the existing home site is 1 lot, and the other lot will be split into those 2 quarter-sized parcels. He said if we limit the requester to 3 lots, can we do that under conditional zoning? And all 3 members that were discussing it said they would like to see this subdivided into no more than 3 lots. And here's where I think the problem arose then, and I even heard it again tonight, that the language used is sites, tax parcels, lots, acres, dwellings, and all of those things are different. This property, where Mr. Beveridge wants to add an ADU, I have done this a dozen times. I've got lots and lots of paper, me trying to plot that out, and I see no way that that west property can have the house, have the pole building that we think may be a garage, and have an ADU on the same property with the setbacks, with the distance required between buildings. That I've gone through it lots and lots of times. So the house, the permitted pole building that they've already drawn the permit on, and the ADU would appear to exceed density, and that's one of the things we can't do over here. And it depends on which way the house faces that's at 1573 Orchard. If it faces toward Orchard, there's one amount of setback. If it faces toward Ramsey, which it has all the years that I've lived here, it would be a different amount of property for these things to set on. So I'm not sure. I had the feeling that maybe the city attorney gave you an idea that as to the way the vote should be, but I think that this has raised enough questions that it would serve well to think about what would happen. If you deny the appeal, I hope you will do it with allowing a buffer between the beverage property and my property. Because without that, there is a second dwelling where people can live that's just 10 feet off the fence and can see across the property line. We'd lose part of the privacy we've enjoyed. I don't want to be an angry neighbor, but I'm being pushed to the limit of what can happen here. So I hope you understand that I've investigated this as much as I can. That I've been over to the city of Hayden a lot. They'll tell you that when Teresa Stack was buying it, and we went through all the things. I had two people come and survey the lines to make sure that we know where they lay. It lays right along my fence. So I think I know that this is exceeding density, and if I'm wrong, I'd sure like to see something that shows me that I am wrong. So I think that's all I've got. I supplied everything I had from this day back over all the time I've been here with that property, with the problems with collapsed sewer, or not sewer systems, collapsed septic that became a cesspool that was very noxious, and I've tried to get help. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I have to commend Zach Trevino. He was very helpful. He supplied things that I hadn't even known then, but I haven't seen anything that tells me I'm wrong about what I'm presenting here tonight. I thank you for your time. I'm sorry this took me a while, but I wanted to make sure that I made my points as carefully and succinctly as I did. Thank you.
Thanks, Doctor. And we had another individual that would like to speak.
Only if you had questions for the owner of the property.
Okay, are there any questions for the owner of the property?
I have some questions.
Please.
I would like to know what size the ADU is and how will it be used? Will it be a personal home or a rental or be sold?
Well, the accessory dwelling unit is 1,000 square feet. That's the maximum that you can have for an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
And city code doesn't stipulate the use. So it can be single-family residential. You can have a member of your household, like a mother-in-law quarters, live in it, or you can rent it. There is no stipulation in the code that addresses that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember White?
I have a
Councilmember
couple.
Priest.
Yeah, the comment that the ADU violates the spirit and letter of the agreement, and this is probably for Caitlin, that's of no bearing, is it really?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, that's okay. The comment that does the ADU violate the spirit and the letter of the agreement, and even if it does so, really, is that of any legal consequence to the situation?
I don't think it does violate it. So an ADU is a residential unit. I mean, it's an accessory dwelling unit, but it's still counted by the city as a residential unit. The zoning development agreement, which I know that you have in your packet, mentions this property in the recitals in the beginning. It talks about the 2 parcels of property totaling 1 acre that were currently zoned residential suburban. It then gives the legal descriptions for those 2 parcels. And then the finding that any use on the property shall be limited to 3 residential dwelling units for the entire 1 acre of property, which is made up of both parcels. So just that's staff's interpretation, is just reading the express language in the zoning development agreement, which was approved then by the owners, the Rutledges, and signed by the city and recorded.
And it carries through to any future?
Yes.
And Donna, there was talk about how the appellant, I guess, can't see how all of this can fit on and meet the setbacks and all. Is the property inspected when the ADU is complete and everything's done? They come in and make sure that everything does meet code and all that?
At the time of their building permit, they supply a site plan, and the site plan addresses the setbacks. And as Dr. Smith noted, it is a corner lot, and it did used to have a Ramsey Road address. But when the frontage improvement, the frontage right-of-way dedications were required on Ramsey Road, it became very apparent that continuing to have a Ramsey Road front yard made not much sense. So as part of the remodel of the home, that front door got switched to Orchard Avenue. So the front yard is now measured off of Orchard Avenue, and the flanking street setback is measured off of Ramsey's future right-of-way. So after he dedicates the required 25 feet of right-of-way, the length of that piece of property, then that setback starts from that point east.
Is there a final inspection where they go out and visually look at it and say, yes, in fact, the final build here does meet what the original plan is, and it does meet all the...
Yeah, they can't put the footings in the ground or anything unless it meets building setbacks.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good questions.
I had one question about ownership transfer. So, and this is really for the record. The agreement that was made 2006, was it predicated upon both lots being owned by the same individual?
The agreement discusses that it is 2 separate parcels, but the parcel owners are the same individuals. There's no limit in the agreement anywhere that they can't be sold or can't be transferred. The zoning development agreement, because they're 2 separate parcels, is recorded against both. Both were owned by the same individual.
And there was no specific designation as to what lot would have the third building?
Correct. I mean, I agree certainly with Dr. Smith on the comments about, the minutes are in the record and just kind of the discussion back and forth about the potential development of the property. None of that made it into the zoning development agreement, which was approved by the parties, the Rutledges and the city, and recorded in what we've been going off of now for 15 years. The density limitation was just limited at 3 residential units per the 2 parcels. The 1 acre whole made up of the 2 parcels.
Thank you. And Donna, would density be exceeded by implementing this building permit per Dr. Smith?
No.
Okay. Just for the record, just want to make sure. Councilmember White, did you have another question?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. Thank you. Question for Donna. What is 1573, what is it currently zoned as?
Single-family residential.
Say again?
Single-family residential.
Single family.
Okay, single family, because I had heard somebody mentioned residential suburban, so that's not the case. Okay, I just want to be clear on that. So it is an R1.
It was residential suburban. Matt, probably that's where the issue rises. It was residential suburban as a condition of zoning it to R1, single-family residential. The condition of zoning it that and changing the zone is that the property owners entered into this zoning development agreement. So it is currently zoned R1 single family with this zoning development agreement.
Okay, thank you.
So for everyone, this is interesting. This is part of life. Do we have any other questions, either for Donna, for Caitlin, or for the property owner?
I was just wondering, is this something that was done at that time? Are we going to come across this same issue again, or is this a one-of?
There are a few of these that are out here that are similar to this.
Okay.
Not with this kind of weird constraint, but that did have constraints associated to their zoning when they were zoned.
Okay, and there was no expiration date to this stipulation or anything like that? Okay.
No, because it's part of the zone. It's like
it runs with the land.
It runs with the land.
Yeah.
It does have language about modification and termination, both of which require a public hearing before it's ever terminated. And that's common with other zoning development agreements that we see.
Okay. Thank you.
So at time, I mean, this is probably good. It doesn't prohibit council to be able to put constraints on anything with respect to future decisions that can be made. For example, yes, this is approved, but it needs to be done in the next 2 years, or yes is approved, but it needs to be done in the next 3 years. And it wasn't the case here. Council has the power, opportunity to be able to do that moving forward, but this isn't the only one out there without an expiration date. Is that a fair?
Yeah, it runs with the zone. So if you just think about it in terms of, well, as long as the zoning stays single-family residential R1, then it makes sense that we have this zoning development agreement. To the extent a zone ever wants to change, the property owners want to come through with the zone map amendment request, well, then this zoning development agreement may not make sense. Or we have other zoning development agreements where they're tied to a use of the property, like we approve, a zone change to a certain zone designation, but we require a zoning development agreement that it can only be used for X. Well, as soon as the property stops being used for that, the zone reverts. So if that makes sense, so it's tied to the zone itself.
And usage must be in compliance with that zone. And if it's not, then, I mean, if there's exceptions, if exceptions were allowed and those exceptions then were not followed, then those exceptions no longer exist. Is that a fair way to say it?
The zoning development agreement, for example, just for the discussion, could have said limited to 2 residential units across all 3, or 1 per lot. And then if it was 1 per lot, then an ADU could never have been permitted because it was 1 per lot. But that's not a case here because it says, 3 for the 2. 3 units for the 2 lots.
And the Rutledges aren't here to talk about it.
I have one more question.
Please.
Could we just discuss the possibility of saying that it could be changed to 2 units per property because
We can discuss anything, but that's not on the table.
And the modification would require both property owners being involved too, because it impacts 1569's property, which isn't a part of this appeal, but it would impact that property, and then require a hearing before you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I guess one more here. Mm-hmm. So along that same line there, so if the owner of the eastern lot wanted to come in and build a house or whatever on it and wanted a second, would they be able to apply for that or apply for a zone change, or are they restricted regardless you've got 2 on the west,
Yeah.
and you're only going to get 1 on the east.
Right.
Okay.
One on the east, absent seeking a modification or termination of that underlying zoning development agreement.
But they do have that ability to apply for that modification.
They have the ability to apply and come before you in a hearing to
Right.
ask if we can release this from our property.
Okay.
But otherwise, they're limited.
Right.
Yep.
So one could say, yeah, I mean, if somebody decided for the 2, and then somebody else wanted a 2, it wouldn't be a part of the original agreement 2006. It would have to come forward to say, hey, this was done. We'd like to modify that agreement or ask for a new agreement.
Right.
Okay. So for the record, Donna, Dr. Smith's comments with respect to density, we're comfortable that density issues and constraints are being met in this case?
Based on the zoning development
Based on the zoning development agreement, and that inspections will be made to ensure that
all setbacks and
every
design
setback is
standards
met.
are met.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure, I think so. This is such a fun one, Doctor, that why not?
I may as well just throw it all out there. I'm just curious what the use of that ADU is. Mr. Beveridge has a YouTube video that tells people how to build these, and he says he has several under construction. And he says they can be used as an Airbnb, as a rental, and that the person doesn't even need to live on the place where they have these ADUs, that they can use it as an investment.
He's right, correct.
That doesn't seem right for everything I know. Maybe Donna knows. I read through it many times. I don't see that as a usage. So
an ADU
I'm
has
just curious. If you live next door to this, do you want people staying for 2 nights?
I do live next door to 2 ADUs. They got me on either side. They're limited in size, but they're not limited with respect to usage, other than they have to follow legal usage requirements. But there's no demand with respect. So the 2 ADUs that are on either side of my home are being used separately. Just the way, meaning, I'm sorry, separately. The usages are different. That's the way to say it. So, Donna, can you help in that regard?
Accessory dwelling units are just that. They're considered to be a residential dwelling that's accessory to the primary use. And so the primary use is single-family residential, and this is an accessory to that. So it could be used for temporary hardships. You know, when you want to have a loved one close, they could be used for the parents moving from one house to the other. And she is correct. They could be used by Airbnb, or they could be used as renters, because, as I said, there are no restrictions in the code related to how that is used. They can't be used for multiple families in the same entity, a single-family residential structure.
Thank you. Does that help, Doctor?
It does. Thank you, Donna. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion or questions by any member of the council? So we either need, can you go to the last slide, Donna? If we want to turn right, we have to turn left, and if we want to turn left, we have to turn
Sorry,
right.
I got to get the right place. Right.
And it's not true that we saved this one from 2006 to your first meeting. So do we have a motion to grant the appeal, which therefore denies the building permit, or deny the appeal, which therefore allows the building permit?
I'll go ahead, and I'll make the motion and kind of help me out here if I get it straight. To deny the appeal, the building permit PB 210495 for the residential accessory dwelling unit at 1573 West Orchard Avenue.
We have a motion to deny the appeal of building permit PB-21-0495 for residential accessory dwelling unit. at 1573 West Orchard Avenue. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
So how do I state
This is
it?
my first vote.
Well, now this is, we tried to make this as difficult as possible. So the motion was to deny the appeal.
Okay.
Therefore, do you approve the motion or not?
Do you vote for or
Do you
against
vote
that?
for or against that motion?
I vote to deny the appeal.
So
yes.
I don't know, is that a question or a?
I vote to deny the appeal.
Okay, so that would be a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Satterfield?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
Thank you. Did you just do this to make us think that you were cool?
I know, right?
Please.
Hey, Sharon, can she hear me?
No, not for that, no. You'd have to do that outside.
I just wanted to
We're
say-
done. Oh,
I'll plant some arborvitae or something.
you know what, that's all, but that's perfect. But it's all done.
Okay, I've never spoken to her. I'm glad she follows me on YouTube. I'm happy to help her out.
She's your neighbor. More than half of the calls that I get would be really good if just neighbors talk to each other. So that's a very good thing.
Yeah, right?
That's not true. 90% of the calls that I get would be better if neighbors just talk to neighbors. Yes. Thank you. By the way, before it's going to be too much fun later. 4E, discussions and consideration of setting workshops or agenda items to discuss potential 2040 comprehensive plan, future land use map and/or zone map amendments. 2, adding council public hearings for certain zone change and other land use requests that currently only have hearings and its public hearings at planning and zoning. And 3, area of impact or ACI agreement with Kootenai County, the city of Post Falls, and the city of Rathdrum. Councilmember DePriest, you were the one I think that wanted to add this.
Correct.
Would you like to take the floor, please?
Sure. And I think we'll break these down individually, 1, 2, 3, correct? And not just go through the whole thing?
You can do whatever you'd like.
I think it's probably best to go through number 1, regarding the amendments to the comprehensive plan, potential amendments to the comprehensive plan, future land use map, current zone, and the like. I think everyone has somewhat acknowledged that the comprehensive plan is confusing and probably needs to, at the very least, be revisited. We can't know what's going to happen 6 months, let alone 6 years, 10 years, or 20 years down the road here. And I believe that the future land use map currently basically ties the city into development that a large number of the residents don't believe is in the best interest of the city and the people of the city. Personally, just my own opinion is I believe that the comp plan and the future land use map were developed around the projections from the KMPO that there are going to be an additional 20,000 people who want to move here in the next 20 years. And I don't believe that as a city we are obligated to accommodate all the people who want to come here. In my opinion, the density of 20,000 more people will turn us into a congested urban environment that's somewhat unrecognizable, and there goes our small town feel. I believe that the primary forum facilitating this new this expansion is the mixed-use type of dwelling, which is basically going to be apartments. And when I look at the current future land use map, I see a lot of purple, which means a lot of people. It's going to be the primary facilitator. In the current form, I believe the comprehensive plan, future land use map basically remove the ability of the council, which are really the people's voice, to deny projects that will add density that the people of Hayden really do not want. And what I am proposing is to revisit the comprehensive plan and the future land use map, more specifically the mixed use aspect of it. And I believe that the current zone map more accurately reflects the reasonable growth plan and footprint that better reflects how the people of Hayden would like to see us grow over the next 20 years. Much of the mixed use is around the Hutter bypass, which we don't know when, if, or ever, and what route the actual configuration will be. And if we go allowing people to start building apartment buildings and they move the route again 10 years down the road, where are we at? And what I want to propose is scheduling workshop or workshops to bring and discuss ideas to the table. Find a way to, and this is great. I would hope that this room would be this full to get the community's input on what they would like to see regarding any potential amendments to the current future land use map. I believe that we can keep the mixed use as a type, but should basically amend the future land use map to closer resemble the current zone map. I would like to see individual applicants apply for zone changes to the current zone map if they want something different than what is there. It would give the council, the people's voice, the ability to determine if the applicant's planned use is in the best interest of the city and of the people at that point in time. If it will benefit, if the applicant's project will benefit the city, if it can be shown at that point in time that it will benefit the city and the people of the city, then approve it. But if it is going to burden the city, the roads, the traffic, the infrastructure, the schools, and the like, at that point in time, then the council should be able to deny it. I think it will allow more consideration of input from the citizens to give them the ability to feel like they're really being heard. I do believe that the city does need multifamily and some level of apartment buildings, but the current map and the mixed-use designation, I believe, as it sits currently, takes the people's voice away. Currently, in general, the applicant seems to simply have to show that their project meets the criteria and is compatible with the future land use map. It, for the most part, I believe, takes away the ability of the council to assess the benefits to the city and the people of the city at the time of that individual project. So basically, I would, from talking to and hearing from the citizens, the current map does not accurately represent their voice, and I would propose, again, setting up workshops or some type of tool to again revisit and see if we want to keep it the same, or if there are some changes that need to be made to the comprehensive plan and future land use map.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next steps in this process, other comments by any member of the council? There's no action that's taken, so this is simply discussion. Moving forward in consideration.
I have to go to take care of my wife.
Go get him. Thank you. Yeah, there's not any. So can we then look at that? Go ahead.
Might I just maybe throw out some suggestions? I've talked with Ed and I appreciate his thoughts and comments. One thing I would, add to that is we did, as far as the council previously did put on hold, because we added the multifamily back in to maybe include that as part of the discussion on how we resolve that, because we put a deadline of one year. I think it was August of this upcoming year that we need to resolve that as well as part of the discussions.
And I understood, even though it might not have been specific. Yeah. It's very understood with that. So I think you're right on. We need to look at that as well.
Yeah, we just need to resolve that as well. We had some discussions about setting a date for a workshop, and I think, starting off with some of the basics. I've talked with Donna as far as process, outlining if we want to get from here to here, how we do that, and public comments. So I think we can start setting some workshops, set a first one, and then we can set one thereafter to start discussing this. We can tie these workshops to a regular meeting, like 25th, or the 8th is the second one in February, or we can set separate workshops on different days. And so whatever the council, whatever your desire is for that.
We can include workshops and public comment.
Right.
Again, and sometimes they're not going to be done at the same time. So you have that opportunity and direction to be able to work with Brett and look forward to that. as we move forward. So
Okay.
it's good discussion, I think, and good direction
Okay.
as we move forward. So
So we're leaving it at that.
We have to
I need
leave it
to
at that.
work with Brett to set up dates for workshops.
or at least identify what you would like with that. And if dates
Okay.
can be identified, that'd be perfect.
Sure.
And every council member has that opportunity as well, if they want to provide input to Brett. What we can't do is have two council members at the same time discussing anything associated with the ramifications or decisions associated with that. How did I do?
Yep.
See?
See?
At some point, I finally listened to you.
Could maybe just some direction. Does the council prefer to have like a workshop tied with the regular meeting, like have a workshop at 3 o'clock and then start the regular meeting at 5, or would you prefer a separate date?
Personally, I sense that initially, it could be a lengthy discussion to basically have everybody, I think everyone who would like to should bring ideas. Some might say, hey, I think it's fine. And other people might have extensive amendments or modifications to it. So I don't know, I'm free most of the time anyway. So, but a couple of hours, some people obviously 3 o'clock might, I would say whatever is most convenient for
everyone? Is there
For
a
everyone.
preference? Does 3 o'clock work for you on a regular? Okay, then maybe what we could do is get together and we could tie it in with one of the upcoming meetings and put an outline to.
Ahead.
And.
I do
involve
have a
some
question
staff.
of that, though.
Please.
In bringing these up, you've got 3 different subjects here.
Yeah.
They're all tied together, of course. Do you want to have workshops, just one workshop for all of them, or a separate workshop for each of them?
I think the comprehensive plan, future land use, is going to be the more complex. The one that we'll talk about next, the zone change process, I don't really think that's going to be very complex at all. After I talk about it, and the same with the ACI. I don't think those will be anywhere near. So I don't think tying them together will be necessary.
Okay.
Or just the opposite, meaning make sure that there's enough to discuss 1, but 2 and 3 being together won't be, we don't have to do those separately.
Right.
That's what he meant.
Right.
Good. I'm sorry, any other? Good, so we can work together with that. With 5, city administrator report and calendar
Well, we
review.
missed 2 and 3.
He wants to talk individually.
Oh, I thought you went to.
No, that was just one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
These will be quick, I think.
Okay.
In addressing, I guess it is E2, the zone change process. Currently, the opportunities for citizens to give input and testimony regarding in specific zone changes is in a public hearing before the Planning Commission. Their recommendation then comes to a meeting, a council meeting, where the people do not have the opportunity to testify or speak in a hearing and give their input to the council members. And others, have been hearing a significant amount of input from the people again, that they feel that they want to speak to the council as we are the elected representatives and therefore really accountable for the final decisions on what happens. And a lot of people have said that they want to be able to talk about it in a hearing situation. So let me skip down here so we can make it quicker. I understand that there used to be 2 public hearings. If I'm not mistaken, there used to be a situation where there was a public hearing there. And in my opinion, a big part of the issue is the perception that the public input carries little, if any, weight. And I believe that by allowing the people to come to the council and speak on planning or zoning changes, would allow the people to feel that they have that opportunity and for the elected representatives to hear them. And I think it's important that we change the perception by creating a process and structure, ordinance, codes, et cetera, which in fact do give the citizens confidence that their input has a fair weight in the decisions. And I'm going to propose that we consider changing the process, creating a new ordinance or code or whatever the vehicle would be, which allows for a public hearing in both the Planning Commission and the council with regard to zone change matters.
And that's a code amendment, Councilmember DePriest, to our zoning ordinance and how we conduct those hearings. that code amendment triggers public hearings in and of itself. That's just the process for doing it, to enact it and implement it, but that's something the city can do. You're correct, we used to do 2 public hearings, one at planning and zoning, one at city council. So, and that's something.
What is the
city-
process to do this?
So we'd need to amend our ordinance, our current ordinance on our procedures for, either a zone map amendment or subdivision approval. I believe annexation is the only one that requires 2 public hearings. Is that right, Donna? Okay. So our annexation is all that's left, where it's public hearing at planning and zoning, public hearing at city council. The Local Land Use Planning Act requires, at a minimum, 1 hearing before planning and zoning. It does not require a second at council. So we would just need to amend our code of those requirements under each one for those, the land use regulations, either if it's special conditional use permit, subdivision, preliminary plat, things like that too. Whereby the process is to have 1 public hearing at planning and zoning, give the requirements for that, a second at city council.
Who actually, I mean, I would take it, that would be a future action item. Who?
Yeah, staff would draft it.
Notice,
Just do it, you're done.
Okay.
And Brett?
Yeah, we would, in terms of who does the work, yeah, staff, we can, and Dawn and I have done a
Right.
lot of those.
And is there a public hearing to discuss the public hearing?
Yes.
There is.
Yep. So it's
Discuss the public hearing.
Process.
It's a process,
It's
yeah.
a process. So
So,
I want to caution or explain, when we had 2 public hearings, it was recognized that we were actually doing more in excess than what state code requires. Code requires 1 public hearing with planning and zoning, and if substantial changes are proposed by planning and zoning, it can trigger a public hearing with the city council the way the code is written today. And should an appeal or request for reconsideration be requested of a council decision, that triggers a public hearing as well. So you could go, if you went to a second public hearing with city council, you could, and had a request for reconsideration, you could actually end up with 3 public hearings, all in all. So I just want to kind of let you think about that a little bit.
Okay.
but that could be
You're saying-
discussed at the public hearing.
Yes,
We
exactly,
discussed
but Councilmember DePriest had noted that he wanted to change the public hearing requirements for zoning. Subdivisions and plan unit developments require a public hearing with planning and zoning and a public meeting with city council. Today, are you looking at making those changes as well?
Now that you bring it up, I would think it's a good idea, because as I say, the feedback or input, and I see head shaking, that I've received from the people is that they really believe that, I think they feel like they're able to express themselves, be heard when they get to talk to the council. So I would say yes to your question.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment as future legal
Sure.
counsel?
Yes.
It might be beneficial also to workshop a land use training for the public.
No, that's really where, that's okay. I'm just smiling. It's okay, because and we talked about that before.
Perfect.
And we'd like to do that in a workshop, a public workshop.
Yes.
Because it makes sense. Part of the issue is when there's a vacuum, it's filled by incorrect information, too much information, not enough information. It's just, and that's the frustrating part. So, thank you. Thank you, future attorney. Or is that you? I mean, I don't know, it's to replace, and I truly understand that. Perfect. Number 3.
Okay, Donna, would it be possible to put the county's map up that shows the ACI borders and the like? I know that when I go to mine on it's, the Kootenai County, and there's maps, and then you can hit a little drop down that overlays the ACI and shared tier and the like.
That's going to be, and if we can't, but at least you can recommend what you want.
Right.
So, or would like to see. What are you doing?
As you just go to Kootenai County and then.
And I'm just trying to figure out the best path to
We
get
heard
there.
her in the back. You heard her in the back.
Oh, no, that won't do it. Let's try this one. The other one's broken.
And then up on the right, I'm sure you recognize that up the top right there, there's a,
We just have to get there.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Can you bring it up a little bit more so that, I mean, Hayden and then into the west a little bit where the shared tier is?
Shared tier goes quite a ways, so.
Right. Or just maybe just our ACI.
Those are the city of areas. This is the.
That is,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to pull both.
Yeah.
So the city limit, the area, city
Where's
limits
Hutter?
is in pink.
Right. Now, our ACI extends out west of Hutter there a little bit, kind of, so I don't know if we can get, anyways, okay, let me kind of go through this. And I've had conversation with other city council people over time, and there are some who feel that it is a good time to maybe reevaluate the ACI agreement, which is the county, and I believe it's Hayden, Post Falls, and Rathdrum. I think Coeur d'Alene has their own with their own agreement and the like. But David Callahan, who is the county community, the county community development director, put out a white paper within the last year talking about a lot of things, but in specific to the ACI. He said that he believes that the ACI agreement is outdated, and a couple of excerpts from his white paper. He says, although the ACIs have been useful means of growth management, many of the current agreements are outdated. It was signed on September 15, 2004, and there was an amendment to it in 2005, and that's the last time it was really addressed. He says, he goes on to say, and I'm going through, not going to read everything here, but due to significant annexations by these cities and the city of Coeur d'Alene, which has its own ACI agreement with the county, the geographic areas of the ACIs, as well as Kootenai County Comprehensive Plan designations of border and transitional, which specifically relate to ACIs and were delineated in 2010 based on then existing city limits, are no longer representative of projected growth. As a result, many of the previously agreed to buffer areas, which are necessary to plan for future growth of the cities, have disappeared. Without the updating of the ACIs that are meant to coordinate urban expansion, there is less certainty about how cities will grow in the future. In order to promote healthy and sustainable growth, ACI agreements and comprehensive plan designations should be updated. Without an update of the ACI agreements and their geographical boundaries, Kootenai County existing growth management efforts may fall short of the goal of promoting responsible urban expansion. So, and Donnie, you can probably talk to this more than I. It's my understanding that all the cities involved in this probably have to get together with most likely the county, I'm assuming, and go through this, whatever this, and I'm sure it's not a simple process. But I'm going to propose that we do initiate or move forward on at the very least revisiting the ACI and shared tier. I currently believe that it's time that we define borders here. And what is going to be I guess the future ACI borders, but get rid of the shared tier, because there's the term that I've heard is land grab going on primarily between Post Falls and Rathdrum. And if you look at there in the middle between Wyoming and Hayden, you'll see where it says shared tier in that little green block, that's Post Falls. Yep. And then just on the other side of Greens Ferry, that's Rathdrum. Now, I don't know what's going on there, but just me personally, I go, those are two dogs marking their territory, trying to get the jump, because it appears as that's going to be the disputed area between Rathdrum and Post Falls. And
One of.
Huh?
One of.
One of. But with us, we have an ACI area that extends west of Hutter between Prairie and Hayden, I believe. And
we extended in our planning, we rolled it back out to Meyer, which is where before the shared tier existed, and all the cities rolled their areas of city, their exclusive areas of city impact in 2004. They rolled them back and kind of made that shared tier a little bit bigger. And so with our latest, we kind of recognize the fact that we need to kind of, now that we have some infrastructure out on the west side of town, it would behoove us to look back at our original kind of area. That's what we kind of did in the last
we don't have any infrastructure west of Hutter presently, but we have several lift stations planned out there for future, I believe, if I was reading it correctly. And I guess just, again, my opinion on this, and as I look at it as part of the consideration is, does the city of Hayden really want to expand west of Hutter? What do we want that land for? What do we need that land for? Do we want to go to the expense of the infrastructure and the like? When from what I'm seeing, Post Falls, anybody's driven there, looks to me like they're going to push up with continued tract home developments as far as they can get.
Which is why the city was looking to protect that buffer initially. It was just the opposite of what we think, is that if we have then control, and I can't speak, I mean, there's been a lot of discussions, but when you said that that was the intent, was to expand to buffer. So we wouldn't be bordered on. So.
And Ed and I had this discussion, and I think his point, or where he's wanting to go with this, is a good overall point, and meaning, particularly just in the prairie with everything, there are some things we could do just to outline, but there's a lot behind the scenes, meaning where's the infrastructure? Where does it make sense for things to go? Because our lift station is fairly close to some of this other things, and it makes much more sense on a public policy basis that we look at some areas. And then there's some 5-acre pieces and things. All of those pieces come together to say, okay, this makes the most sense to kind of put some lines on the paper. And so his point of putting some lines on the paper coming together with everything that's happened makes some sense. It is harder to do. I would suggest that if you prioritize things, that, the second one's fairly easy. I think we can probably go through and look at that and do that fairly quickly. I think priority-wise, your number one is probably your priority. And then we could start to engage the county, but it would require all of the entities, other than Coeur d'Alene, to come together and work on that.
Each city probably would have to, their council would probably have to do the same thing, direct that they're planning and everybody engage each other. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got what you've said, we've got kind of a four-way, party here with the 3 cities in the county under that code. That's the group. So we've got to work, with the other 2 cities and the county to change that, just because that code that we're talking about in the shared tier applies to
each of them,
us together. Yeah, Post Falls, Hayden, and Rathdrum, depending on which one that you're in. But I agree with you. It's timely. You're right. It's in the Local Land Use Planning Act that you need to engage in a discussion on the ACI every 10 years, and so.
We're only 10 years behind the 10-year.
Yeah,
we're due.
Yeah.
The other side, though, too, is that part of that discussion included school district alignment early on, and that was part of that agreement as well, which is an interesting.
Does Coeur d'Alene School District extend out into that west of?
No. Well, what's interesting is that's why you see Rathdrum on one side, Post Falls on the other.
Coeur d'Alene.
It was originally, that was one of those decision-making processes.
Coeur d'Alene realigned to be with the Coeur d'Alene city limits. Hutter is now the dividing line, but for a while there, Coeur d'Alene was split. Properties on either side of Atlas and Hutter were in the Post Falls School District, but in the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Has that been resolved?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Hutter is on the city limit.
But it took superintendents the opportunity to be able to sit down and discuss, and it's just an interesting to watch them in the room. It was really interesting.
Well, and that's only Coeur d'Alene. I can't speak to the Lakeland School District or in Post Falls, but I think that's an ongoing issue out there as we kind of creep towards, well, whose zone is that going to be in? We have properties in Hayden, the north side, that are zoned Lakeland School District.
Right.
Yep.
But that was the original, when you talked about that piece, that was part of that piece discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you. So again, we can't, Art, you're doing great, but thank you, but there's no discussion. Huh?
I just say, explain the colors. What are the colors?
They're watercolor. You did fine. That's probably a good thing. Donna, just real quickly.
Dark pink are city limits, light pink are area of city impact in the exclusive tier. In the exclusive tier, Coeur d'Alene is yellow, Post Falls, that's in this really darker green, is the city of Post Falls, but in the lighter green are or vice versa, are the shared impacts in the shared area, exclusive impacts. City of Rathdrum, impact is in light blue, and dark blue is city limits, and this kind of lighter shade area out here, all the way out here, is shared tier. So it goes quite a ways. The shared tier is quite large, larger than people think it is.
Good question, good clarification.
Is the county gray, the gray color?
It's the shared tier.
Yeah, but if we were to ask, I think the question's fair, it's in this
It's
map.
in the county.
It's
correct.
county, that is county, so I didn't want to, it's exactly, that's Gray's County,
ACI and the shared tier are currently county.
correct.
Confusing concept.
See what we have to look forward to? Attorneys, thank you, and it takes two we're excited. Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Councilmember
Thank you very
Priest,
much.
Thank you. Two things, just for, we want to present Caitlin, we were going to do, like a plaque because you need one, but we wanted to present you at the card.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. You're amazing.
Well, thank you.
And the one that is to whom it may
And
concern
everybody
is
heard that,
from
right?
me.
That an attorney was amazing.
I've had a lot of calls, and I want to make sure that it could be a part of the report process and should be. It snows in Idaho. So I'd like to begin by saying if you're new to the area, it snows. Sometimes it snows a lot. Sometimes it doesn't snow as much, but it snows. So with that, we have swales. There's a swale between your properties. Many times the swale's used for snow. So please do not call the city to tell them that your neighbor's putting snow in the swale, because that's what the swale's used for. And you can use your own property, use the other property. I would suggest talking to your neighbor instead of calling City Hall or 911. The other side is, it's hilarious. It's okay. I have to be careful because I'm on television, but it doesn't really matter. The city's not going to pick up your snow. So please do not call the city and say, we have snow on our property. When are you coming to pick up? Because I'll probably say June, maybe August. It depends on. So it's going to snow. We are responsible for snow. So if you've lived here less than a year or a year, please note that snow is a part of our community. It will do it often. Sometimes it will do it in the fall. Other times it will do it who knows when. But the responsibility of taking care of it, our city does a phenomenal job. In fact, it's really interesting to get the people in Coeur d'Alene, that want to be in, because they want to know how we do our job in Hayden. Our team is phenomenal, and I want to recognize them for especially in the last week or so, the amount of snow that hit and the amount of sleep that they did not have. We have a great system to make sure that the berms are knocked down. That system is manual. When the snow is wet and heavy, which it was on Thursday, we had a lot of snow. Had it stayed dry, the berms, and for all of you, we all have berms. So please note that berms will be knocked down except when it's really wet snow and a lot of snow. The berms will stay high. For those that want to know what a berm is, it's what's left after you plow. So the city, if in fact you're in need of help, assurance, if you're stuck in, I mean, the city's been amazing. The people that work here, I cannot thank them enough. So we'll do what we can, but those berms do exist when it's heavy, wet snow. And so just knock it down as best we can and do what you can do, and call your neighbor. We've had calls, interesting calls. Secondly, there was a shooting. There are numerous. We've had an interesting year. I get calls from Sheriff Norris often. There's a lot going on in Hayden that isn't easy. And this shooting, for clarification purposes, I was asked, the individual that the incident applied to on Sunday was at Walmart and then drove into a parking lot not knowing that it was a church parking lot. It wasn't affiliated or centered or acted upon against any one church or group of churches. And he was under, they knew where he was for many hours. So no one was in danger. No one at church was in danger. We had plainclothesmen go into the church. I say that because at some point, this is not the time to arm yourselves as congregations. I mean, every congregation will have their own decision-making with respect to that. We have laws that will be followed with respect to guns, and we're very open in the state of Idaho. So, but I just wanted clarification. I've received calls that it was a specific religion targeted. No, it was a parking lot, and that individual had nowhere else to go. So, and it was a joint venture with Kootenai County Sheriff, Coeur d'Alene Police, and SWAT, which is now the critical, SWAT is, it's not necessarily SWAT, it's the critical crime group, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's made up of members of the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. So I wanted to talk about that. It's not an easy conversation, but to make sure everybody is aware that our law enforcement are amazing men and women. And I've seen it firsthand more times than I want to. So, and it will snow again at some point. And so please don't call 911. It will snow and we can't pick it up. So thank you. How'd I do? Good. Brett, any city administrator information?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a list here. I'll go through a couple items. You mentioned Sheriff Norris, and we have committed to them to start our public safety committee again. We were trying to get through most of COVID, I think. We've committed after the first of the year to do that. So if there are citizens that want to be part of the public safety committee, that's looking at our relationship with the sheriff, our response times, all of that, let me know. We had about 6 citizens that were on it before, but we'd be open to anybody that wants to serve on that. Let me know. We'll put something out on the website as well. Sheriff Norris wants to come talk about some of the issues and things that are going on. That'll be at the next meeting on the 25th. I wanted to follow up a little bit on our snow plowing and also just say and commend our public works for what they do. Most people don't know we have approximately 75 miles of roads that they have to plow. They do them in a specific order so that the arterials and things like that are done first. But it takes us 12 hours, and it's been growing. It takes 12 hours for them to get through a complete plow of the city. And our city is, from what I understand, is one of the few that we try to do a complete plow out and get it done. Now, depending on how the storms come, we have to allow the guys to go home, get some rest. And this last group of storms, created some issues, but they did a great job. So I wanted to thank Alan and his team for in parks and streets for the great work they do there. Speaking of our park areas, we have an open house coming up on January 26th. We invite all of the public to come. It's for the Honeysuckle Beach options. We're looking at an issue that has been a problem for more than 30 years with the use down at Honeysuckle Beach with the beach area as well as the launch area. And so there are some ideas that we're putting out. For council, we'll get the packet of information to you before that workshop so you have the information and know. So I think most of you have seen a lot of that. But that open house will be January 26th, 4:30 to 6:30 in this room here.
By the way, it's phenomenal because we've tried to do for many, many years launch and swim and park and fish and family and not family. And so this is a great solution, which will help me to sleep at night. So thank you.
Yeah. And we mentioned, I'll just briefly, the Lancaster Water Tower Park. We'll continue to work on the park piece of it, but the idea of getting people up on top of the water tower, there were some concerns from DEQ, and then the cost to do it from the Avondale Water District. They voted not to do that, and so I know several of you participated in those meetings and heard some of that in the past, and so we'll just continue to work on a park that's there.
Do we know on the other one that we weren't able to make any decision on or provide any guidance or direction that is located just off of Highway 95? How did I do for making sure that 80 people voted on? When will that be completed, or do we know? I'm getting a lot of calls.
I can't remember when John said they were going to raise it.
It's probably March, April would be my guess. So when you see there's like a bowl at the bottom, basically they lift that up to the top, and that's where the water is held. It's to hold approximately 2 million gallons.
And that is not for the city of Hayden, that is for
the
Hayden Lake Irrigation
Yeah,
District.
it was not our decision to put it there. We actually went to some effort to try to get them to move it to another location due to some FAA issues and some other issues. They chose to put it there. Although the mayor knows that's a little bit of a sore subject with me. So anyways, I won't say any more about that. Day at the Capitol is January 20th. So council members, I think you've heard that, our new council members, we have a couple people going down. We meet with our legislators and we get an update on all the upcoming legislation from the Association of Idaho Cities. If you can't make that, we bring that information back and share it with you as well. So if you have any questions about that after or tomorrow, you can give me a call. HURA has requested a joint workshop. We're thinking sometime in February just to get together now that we have two new council members, just to talk about what HURA does. That's our Urban Renewal District. And get any ideas the council might have, any thoughts, suggestions. And so we'll probably tie that in with one of the regular meetings in February. Also, I sent you, and I think Ed and Sandra, you received as well, the information for the fire impact fee. The council previously agreed that we would support doing an impact fee to pay for the impacts, growth paying for growth. And so they finished their study and they want to come make a presentation on the 25th as well. So we'll hear on the report. We won't be making any specific decisions in that meeting, but they want to give a report on what they found. So lastly, we have a lot of things to work on. I think both, probably all of you have wondered about the ARPA funds. So the money that we were receiving from the federal government. The plan is that we will come back to the council and go through a process. We want to hear from the public on how we want to use that. We've talked previously about using some of it for a sewer project on Ramsey Road, but that has not been approved. And so with all the things that have been brought up, we need to fit in some time to talk about the ARPA money as well. So you can see all of the different issues that we have to work on. So we'll bring that back as well at a later time. But we have about $3.1 million that we'll be able to use, but it's very specific under the rules that we've been given. So that's all I have. I know that was more than I normally, but
and there's a lot going on.
anyways, and welcome our two new council members.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any member of the council?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate you coming out, and as I said earlier, and you hear we do have a lot going on, and hopefully the things we've spoken about tonight, we can move along. But those of you who know me, and you have to come in, you have to bring your neighbors and friends. I'd like to see this place packed, especially when we have the hearings and the workshops, because you're the ones who are going to really help us to make the decisions about how the city runs and the direction we go. So again, I appreciate you coming tonight and hope to see you and your neighbors and friends a lot.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned. Less than 2 hours is pretty good. There's a lot going on.
Katie, for off the record.
I know,